Greetings, Retro Lover. This is Ethan, aka the Ghost Mall, coming to you yet again from my home studio, and it is Wednesday. So we have another Work in Progress Wednesday to share with you today. Thank you for showing up to check this out. Again, what I do on Work in Progress Wednesdays is to bring you a bit of a preview of some Retrowave tune that I'm currently working on in my studio, and let you hear something that's going on behind the scenes, but maybe more importantly, share a little bit with you about how I produce and write my songs and get those retro sounds. So the tune that I'm working on today is a tune called Like Clockwork, and it is a tune that I've had in the works for a while now, and the arrangement is getting fleshed out. That's the phase I'm in right now, is sort of fleshing out the arrangement. The lyrics are written, the melody's written, the overall structure is framed in here, as you can see. But I'm still in the process of coming up with ideas for some of what I like to call the ear candy parts, the ornamentation and the interesting things that come in and out. But the bones are here for this song. So what I thought I'd do is play you what I have going here with the track. And maybe afterward I'll break down some of the instrumentation and how I get those retro sounds. So what I had in mind for this when I was writing this was a really upbeat, kind of romantic 80s pop song, you know, influenced by 80s teen movies, and the lyrics definitely reflect that. The vocals are not here. They haven't been recorded yet, not even scratch demo vocals, but I'm going to let you hear the track. So here you go. This is Like Clockwork, and then I'll break it down a bit for you once I've played you through the track as it is now. All right, so there you have it. That is the track as it stands on this Work in Progress Wednesday for the tune Like Clockwork. Like I said, it's definitely meant to be a bit of a mid 80s romantic teen pop kind of a jam. So oftentimes when I write, I begin with a melody. And in this case, that's what happened. I didn't have the melody in, but this is the melody just played on a simple kind of digital synth lead here. And I'll play you back a bit of the verse with that in. This is the pre-chorus, and then we've got the chorus coming after that. So there you have it. Sort of that's the verse, pre-chorus, and chorus with the melody in, and then from there, often I will go a few different directions. Either I'll start to lay down the rhythm underneath it, or what I did in this case, which is I like to sort of build the chords around the melody and sort of give it an interesting harmonization. And for that, you know me, I love the definitive sort of retro sounds, and to me, no synthesizer sound is more reminiscent of the 80s than a Yamaha DX line FM electric piano. And I use a lot of different VST synths for those kinds of sounds. But in this case, I used FM8, which is a great FM synthesizer, kind of more clean, definitely, than a DX would be. And this is a patch that I actually I didn't create, but it's a EP that I tweaked from another patch. And by itself, it sounds like this. It has some processing here. Quite a bit, actually, from Slate's VMR. Without the processing, it just doesn't sound as shiny, right? And in addition to that, it has a little bit of reverb from one of my favorite reverbs, Spark Verb. Oh yeah, that's dead without it. So that was sort of the heart of the song after the melody. I began doing the arrangement by making some cool chord progressions with the EP. And then to complement that, I stuck with a digital sound, actually a Yamaha DX kind of sound for the bass. This is from UVI's FMX1, which is a library of sampled sounds from the Yamaha DX1, sort of like the flagship giant DX synthesizer from the 80s. And this bass sound is definitely what the patch is called, a classic DX bass. Very plucky, very percussive, and blended in with the keys, it sounds great. And I have some processing going on there as well. Got some VMR for some EQ, compression, little additional equalization for some low end, and some tube. I always love to add tube saturation on basses. Not always, but I often do. It sounds really good. Now, of course, this is not a mix. It's just my initial production phase that I'm in. But I do like to shape sounds as I go through. I often start with presets because As I mentioned in some previous videos, I don't consider myself a sound designer. I consider myself more of a songwriter. And so I like to have presets that inspire me, that I can jump right in and start using, that are practical and inspiring. And then I'll sort of tweak them from there just to shape them in the production phase. And then later in the mixing phase, of course, they'll get probably changed even further. So then the other key part of the rhythm section is a Lindrum kit. And probably the most quintessential 80s drum machine was the Lin, and I have a lot of different VSTs that include versions of it, like the Real Machines from Addictive Drums 2 and a few different other places. But this is the stock Lindrum kit from Battery. As you can see, it has a ton of samples, and by itself it sounds like this. I added a little bit of tape from Slate virtual tape machines. Always sounds good on drums, and some VMR too. Oh yeah, I got some parallel compression here with the Monster and Revival. Let's A/B that real quick. It's subtle, gives a little lift. So now I started with the melody. I wrote the chords around it with the EP. Then added the drums, and I always think of the bass as a way to glue the rhythm of the drum kit and percussion to whatever instrument is sort of comping out the chords. So in this case, the bass is like the glue between the Lindrum and the EP. So just these core elements build, the basis of the song, and they sound like this together. So you get the picture of the basis of the song. And then from there, I like to add on what I call the ear candy parts, sort of that pique your interest throughout as the song progresses. I could say something here, I think, about how I organize my sessions and keep things clear. The red tracks here are drums and percussion, and also if I have any effect samples or things like that, I color code them that way. Blue for the bass. The green instruments are ones that play chords that are either comping, like a keyboard, could be a piano, an EP, or a organ or whatever, or a synth pad if it's playing, multiple notes. The purple tracks are various forms of, ear candy, and these slightly different purple tracks are guitars. So that's how I like to organize from top to bottom: is drums and percussion and rhythmic samples, bass, keys that play chords, and all the other stuff. And then I put the melody and or the vocals, if it's vocal track, down at the bottom in gold, because that's the gold right there. That's the heart of the song. A couple other things before I wrap this video up. I guess I'll explore a little bit about how I chose the synthesizers for this. So usually when I start a new session, writing a new Retrowave tune, I pick a handful, 2, 3, maybe 4 at the most, old units from the period of time that I'm going for to use, and I use them multiple times in the session. So in this case, I was thinking sort of a digital sound, like I said, a Yamaha DX sound, and I only complemented that with a few things. So I used the FM8 for the DX electric piano, and the FMX1 library for the DX bass, and then another similar synthesizer that used something akin to FM called phase distortion was Casio's CZ line of they were synthesizers that kind of straddled the line between a consumer product and not a toy, but definitely sort of a more consumer product and a genuine musical instrument. But I love the sound that they have, and I have the virtual CZ plugin, which is great. But in this case, these sounds are coming from UVI's Cameo CZ library, which is also awesome. And I've got the Afro Perk patch. This is an ARP. And then also the lead that plays the melody happens to come from that. So I'm basically, what I'm saying is I stuck to a sort of mid-80s digital synth sound here. And if I pile up those sounds, you're going to see they have a shiny, kind of maybe even plasticky kind of a sound, but they gel together rather nicely. I'll just play you the chorus with those elements in. There's that ARP by itself, and that Afro Perk sound, which actually doubles part of the vocal melody. The digital synths like the DX line and the CZ line were usually really good at creating bell sounds and percussion sounds like marimbas and stuff, and this is a really good example of that. Yeah, so the only other element here are some guitars, and I did sort of get inspired by a couple guitar loops, and I put them in different spots. You'll see the first one enters with the chorus, then I have a pair of them paired left and right, panned left and right, excuse me, that enter in the second verse for some flavor. And then there are some guitars that I recorded myself. Now these are just scratch versions, and they're not only sloppy, but they got a little bit out of sync when I changed the tempo and had to stretch the files a little bit. But let me play you some of the guitar parts here along with the main comp so you can hear what we've got going with those. This is the first chorus. Kind of has that funky syncopation. One thing I really wanted to do with this sample, with this loop, because it had a neat kind of a, like I guess it's like a spring reverb kind of sound built in, baked into the sample. Listen to this. But it wasn't that audible at first, so I thought about adding some additional reverb, but instead what I discovered I could do, and here's a little trick for you if you want to enhance the reverb on a track you already have, is I took Transient Master here, and I just cranked the sustain, which is sort of the tail end portion of the sound, which is, you know, the reverb tail in this case. So let's A-B that so you can hear the difference. That's without, here's with. So in a way, it's almost like turning up the reverb send post, you know, reverb. So yeah, that was just to enhance the chorus a little bit. And then I have a couple other ones here. I'm going to mute the guitar tracks I recorded and let you hear in the second verse. Another track that I love is this one here. It's a digital pad kind of from the Synclavier FM synth that sort of fleshes out and gives a sort of warm round sound to the chords. And it comes in the break between the first chorus and the second verse and comes in a few other places, but here it is. Now, that is meant to layer upon and fill out the EP and the bass, so let's hear those together. It has a real warm, sort of wide open sound, and I had to tweak that quite a bit also with Slate VMR. Listen to it without, and then I'll turn on the processing. It kind of sounds inert, you know, a little dead, there isn't much sustain or shine to it, so let's turn this on and hear the difference. It's much more lively thanks to some EQ. The Slate Custom Lift, which is like kind of like a tilt EQ and some compression. So then from there, let's add these couple more guitar samples, which just sort of add a bit of a rhythmic syncopation and also a width because they're panned left and right to the second verse that wasn't there in the first verse. That's what those are. And I just like that they add something novel in the second verse to keep things interesting and fresh for the listener. And the only other thing, like I said, are these guitars that I recorded that also have a sort of palm muted, distorted kind of a sound, just to add some additional syncopation, which is a word I've said a lot while I've been breaking this down. But I really love old funky tunes that had a lot of different unique parts syncopated off of one another that created not just a sense of a nice big chord, but a lot of movement. Folks like Michael McDonald did this really well, Stevie Wonder, and those arrangements of theirs. So again, these guitars are a little sloppy because they're just scratch and they got stretched, but let's listen to those and I'll mute these samples. So the first one comes in on one side. We only have one side through the verse and pre-chorus, and then in the chorus, the other side comes in to harmonize with it. And you can hear that they're not identical, they're playing off of one another and harmonizing. And then we're into the bridge, which is the most incomplete section. It's sort of just framed in. So I think I'll stop there. That is a little preview and behind the scenes breakdown of the track I am currently producing on this Work in Progress Wednesday. It's called Like Clockwork. And it is a Retrowave tune slated not for this upcoming The Ghost Mall EP, but a later release. Lyrics are finished and stuff. So once I finish doing what you see me doing here, which is to polish up the track and finish up the arrangement, it will be sent to a vocalist and recorded. The next steps I'm going to do, just in case you're interested, are to flesh out the drum parts and add some more variation and fills. I'll also do fills with the bass. And the EP is sitting pretty much where I want it to. It's nice and clean and interesting enough. And then I'm going to re-record these guitars, and that's about it. Finish up the bridge. Like I said, it needs some love. But that's where the song is going. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was interesting to you if you are into how to produce retro-sounding tunes. And thanks for listening. I hope you'll check in with us next time on the next Work in Progress Wednesday or just the next video. And hope to see you there. Take it easy, guys.